It took 12 years, but KSP2 finally launched. So let's take a look at it, even with some of my mistakes. Early Friday morning, I was counting down the last seconds before KSP2 would be available for purchase. And yes, I was ready to buy this as soon as it became available. Actually, I was ready to buy it when I heard that they were going to be building it. Oh yeah, I basically spent the money for this game 2 years ago when they announced it. But KSP finally did launch, and we have KSP2 now. Now, it is a early development copy, per se. Actually, it's early access. So, what's going on here is we are getting a portion of the game right off the bat. Now, we are paying full price for it at this moment, but this includes all future updates to KSP2. Hopefully, they don't try to pull the DLC thing and throw out DLC before they finish the main game. But the rest of the game will be finished with this copy, as they say it from today. The copy they have out right now is less than Kerbal Space Program 1. It's almost like the sandbox mode of Kerbal Space Program 1. We don't have any science, we don't have any career mode yet, and we've got basic control of most things. And a lot of the items in here are original to the game, but there are a few things, like you can see in the background, there's a bigger solar panel, and there's these large balloon-like tanks of some sort. Even had a really cool kind of startup little intro thing that gave us a reason for being here. It's like we have been hired to be the director of operations over the KSC, or rather the Kerbal Space Center. And we are to direct and help the Kerbal kind become a spacefaring race. And with the promises of the game, later on when we get interstellar travel, this will be really entertaining to be able to play and travel not just to other planets, but other star systems. At least one other star system as promised so far. And at putting it together just a basic bare bones rocket, I had a little bit of fun just hunting down a little bit of aerodynamics and just wanted to launch and get going. I couldn't figure out how to use they're supposed to be dynamic wings, and you can change the size of them, but I hadn't figured that out yet. So let's just launch and get our little Kerbal feet off the ground. But something to also note here, I didn't realize it until I was actually retrieving this rocket. This rocket is called Fly Safe, which is one of the direct goodbye quotes of Scott Manley, who has covered space anything since, I found him. Like, he is another YouTuber, and I have a feeling like he actually contributed a good chunk of science knowledge towards the Kerbal Space Program game in general. And even if he didn't, he had enough influence that the Kerbal Space Program people felt like he needed to be a part of this game in some way, shape, or form. And there might be other Easter eggs that are coming from other YouTubers who have made an influence on the space community, and hopefully they stay an influence on the space community. It's really kind of a neat thing to see normal people get included in games like these. That's kind of novel. I think it's really cool. In the meantime, you can see the beautiful wobbliness of Kerbal Space Program does not leave us wanting. I could not figure out why my derpy little rocket here was having such a hard time controlling itself, but those control fairings definitely were jumping all over the place. It was great. I was having fun with this, and this first launch, we do not make it into orbit. We do make it into some of the medium atmosphere, not the upper atmosphere, but we make it a little far, and I tried to see just how far we would get. But there's not a big deal about this one. This was just to kind of verify that most things were working right. And with even just a 3050, I was able to get relatively good graphics. I don't know why, but the clouds look extremely bad pixel-wise. And I think it's probably either A, my video card just cannot handle it, or we are that early in the early access, and that's not a very refined item yet to have the volumetric clouds. But I have to admit, I like the clouds. The clouds really do add a lot to the look of the game already. Now, I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so that we can get back to the ground, because just like normal Kerbal Space Program, once that parachute opens, holy Toledo, does it take a long time to get to the surface. Or, in this case, the water. And I was kind of confused as to why the water didn't look like it was really moving that much. It was weird. And then we're here, and we definitely don't have, as mentioned by all the other YouTubers who got to preview, there's not really much physics in terms of the water. It does look like between the preview that the YouTubers got to do and the launch of the game, they did put a little bit of bobbliness into the water. So that's cool. And I couldn't figure out how to retrieve this ship, so I bounced around and I finally found a recover vessel, and that was great. So let's go build a bigger rocket and let's just shoot for the moon. You know, this is going to be fun. So it took me about a half an hour, or a little bit more. It might have taken a little bit longer, but I didn't want to show you guys the creation of this rocket. It took a moment and a half, and I was able to piece together a rocket very similar to how I've shown you how I like to put together rockets for traveling to various different locations. And this was one place where I actually discovered that there are some things that might have been messed up in the first rocket. It actually turned out I had an extra stage below my main engine, and I accidentally double staged here, and you can see the catastrophic effects of that. I probably could have still made it part of the way to orbit, but losing the engines, at least the two engines that were helping me get into space, really wasn't very beneficial for my situation. So then I discovered that the physics of the game definitely are still holding up, and they do not disappoint in relation to the original Kerbal Space Program. You can already see that my little spaceship up there on the top is wobbling around like a silly little antenna on a car on a freeway. It's fantastic. And that was not the first time that I messed up this launch. So let's give it a try again, because I am not going to recover this rocket. Here we go. Now, when you revert just to the launch pad, this was an interesting thing to kind of put together. If you revert just to the launch pad, you don't get the countdown. So be cautious for that. You will not have to skip over the countdown, which you can do by hitting space, listening to like the first number of the countdown, and then hitting space again. You skip over the countdown, you start. But also, I was kind of underprepared for trying to work with the atmosphere, and definitely I was a top-heavy rocket. So I needed to figure out how to get myself a little bit higher and out of the atmosphere before I tried to rotate. And that was when I actually discovered another error that I hadn't even thought of yet. And that was somehow when I was putting together the rocket... Oh, here, I screwed up again. When I was putting together the rocket, I actually messed up the fuel tubes. And I made it accidentally so that two of the rockets were only connected to each other, or two of the engines were only connected to each other, and a third engine out of the 6 was connected to the rest of the circuit. And so you can see right there, a third engine turned off, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So I went back to the VAB and I found the problem. I fixed my fuel tubes, and I was able to finally start this proper launch. Now, I'm going to go quiet for just a few seconds because the sound quality of this game is amazing. So listen to the rockets as we continue this launch. So some notes about the sound that I noticed was, one, as we zoomed out, we got more of what we hear when we're standing on the ground, being far away from the rocket, listening to the rocket. That crackle of the engines was phenomenal to hear for the first time. I was so excited about it. And I love the artistic value of the background kind of theme music of Kerbal as we were taking off. Now, I have heard that every planet and probably moon has their own theme music as you approach them or land on them. That's kind of cool. But also, I don't know if you noticed, and you might want to backtrack for this, as we left atmosphere, the sound of the rocket got dampened. And admittedly, in space, we're not going to hear anything. But at least having a little bit of sound is really fun for making games. And so it is an appreciable thing to still have a little bit of sound. And in this case, it's like this muffled. And as we left the atmosphere, Kerbal Space Program acknowledged the fact that you would not hear anything. Or in this case, they altered the sound so that it was dampened and you were recognizably in no atmosphere. That is phenomenal efforts. I congratulate the devs of Kerbal Space Program for putting that together. Now, this is currently sped up a little bit so that we can get through the circulation burn, get things ready. We are also going to align ourselves to the moon and go for the moon. This whole trip, off and on, using the time warp and everything, actually took well over an hour, but I'm not going to make you sit through all that. It's only a 25-minute video today. But fascinatingly enough, I was very surprised at the new resources available in the game. You have an engineer report that will help you understand if you have enough delta V to make it to your target, potentially land on your target and other stuff. And you also have all sorts of data around you that's helping. Like underneath the very bottom of our nav ball, you'll see that we actually have our periapsis and apoapsis data and how much time it will take us to get to each of them respectively. On the far right, just above our go button, we have a delta V call out of 1193 and stage 4. This tells us what stage we're in and how much delta V we have left in that stage. I know that was pretty redundant. I didn't need to repeat that, but it is valuable information for keeping you in the know of, are you going to run out of fuel or not when you're trying to do stuff. Now, admittedly, the game paused situation that just popped up, that became really problematic later on. As I was leaving the moon to come back to Kerbal, I actually was really surprised that I got into a mid-state where it kept going from orbit to surface camera mode and going back and forth a bajillion times, basically covering the entire screen with those yellow signs. And it was kind of frustrating. I didn't know what to do with it, but I survived. Otherwise, I'm going to chalk that up to just opening day or launch day bugs. This is still a brand new game, very untested, and the devs need all the data they can get. Another cool new visual cue that we have is when we enter a sphere of influence of another body. You saw those, like, I don't know what to call them, like expanding rings on the map. Those were really cool. And they actually come really in handy as we get closer to the moon. So I was really impressed with those. Now, nothing actually happens. It is just showing your entry point and exit point of the sphere of influence, letting you know. Now, look at this. This is a really cool new visual feature. As we hit 3, 2, 1, you see on the right that we had these little yellow plips, and it was guiding you, like it's a natural guide for you to hit your full power and start your burn. That blew my mind. It was beautiful. It made it so you knew exactly when you wanted to do it rather than guessing, do I need to go a few seconds before or a few seconds after? No. Getting a 3, 2, 1, phenomenal. It was great. Now, I wish that our little SAS ball that we have right next to the nav ball, you kind of see how we have a rocket pointing towards the prograde, and there's the nominal and the all the other different little things that we can look at. You can see me using it right now, but this kind of, it needs one or two more buttons. I think it needs to have a node button for when you set up the nodes for your maneuver nodes, that it would actually allow you to point at your node rather than having to try to figure out where it is on your nav ball. I think that would be a good improvement. That is something that I have to admit I've kind of gotten used to because of McJeb from Kerbal Space Program 1, but it's not a deal breaker. This game is artistically phenomenal. But you can see those antenna things. It goes out from the center when you're entering, and it goes in towards the center, as you can see over there, when you're exiting the sphere of influence. Pretty cool stuff, I gotta admit. So now that we're inside the sphere of influence of the moon, I've gone straight to the periapsis so that I have a frame of reference, and we were able to circularize. Easy peasy. Now I am starting to get curious about how much delta V I have left, because I do want to circularize at a lower altitude. And I also found that interesting. Did you see that little notice that popped up? That notice could get annoying in the future because it was telling me that the solar panels no longer had any sun. Yeah, we're in the shadow of the moon or the shadow of a planet. It's not going to get anything. It probably is a notice that doesn't need to be there. It luckily does count down very fast, and it went away. So I'll take it for a grain of salt or whatever. It's okay. Now, I have to admit, I mentioned the resources for figuring out your delta V necessary for various events within the game is in the game. And I didn't use them for this. I kind of just built this rocket purely by feel, and I wasn't entirely sure if I could succeed at what I'm about to do. So the fact that I'm about to try to land on the moon with a test rocket that literally is the second rocket, well, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, sixth-ish rocket, because I used the same rocket about 6 times and failed 6 times, whatever. 7th rocket that I have built, I am pretty surprised that this actually is kind of working. And I also realized, as I'm getting here, I'm like trying to use the SAS. The SAS trying to point me in the retrograde position, and I'm like, I need to get over a little bit. Check out the different look of the hydrogen engine. We went from a normal kerosene engine to a hydrogen engine, and the hydrogen engine kind of has this pinkish burn to it. Oh my, that is really cool. I'm pretty sure hydrogen does burn reddish, pinkish, and that's part of the reason why we have red, pink neon lights, is because they put hydrogen in the neon lights. Isn't that cool? But here we are over the moon, and I'm trying to figure out right now just how to kill my various like surface speed and vertical speed and stuff, and I probably way wasted so much fuel in this effort. I could not believe how it was actually kind of embarrassing. So that's why I'm still rambling about it. But I gotta give credit to the look of the game. This is a far superior looking moon than the original Kerbal Space Program had, obviously. And just the shockingly beautiful look of seeing Kerbin in the background was really fun. Now, we're just a few meters away from the ground. We're 300, 200, and then we're in the 100s. I gotta admit, not having any sort of automation for landing this, this was a new one. I have not used automation for landing in quite a while. And so this was interesting. And I also didn't know if I was about to break my engine. So I'm having that freak out moment as well. And you can just, even with the basicness of how this game is put together already, I was pretty impressed that they had this much of the game done. Like, this feels playable. It feels enjoyable and fun. It is weird that it's actually telling me I can recover my vessel, and I'm like, I'm on the moon. I don't think they can let me recover the vessel from here. So that was just totally weird. I think that's just a glitch, and that will be fixed in future iterations. But here we are. We're on the moon. Within the first hour of having purchased KSP 2. And literally, this is the first hours after KSP 2 became available on February 24th, 2023. Just 11 years, 12 years after the launch of the original Kerbal Space Program that altered physics in games for all time. It's great. So the fact that they were able to build an entirely new system, like this isn't using the original Kerbal Space Program game engine at all. They rebuilt the game engine for this purpose. It's really a phenomenal step forward. I gotta give them credit. Now, I was afraid to leave the ship because I wasn't sure if SAS would turn off and I would immediately lose my rocket tipping over. So I just decided to take off and head back to Kerbal Space Program. Now, guys, thank you for joining me for this wonderful first experience and getting a first look at Kerbal Space Program 2. I really like the game. I have great hopes for the future of this game. And I admit there's probably not going to be very many KSP 2 episodes in the near future because I'm very interested in new content coming out for KSP 2. So I want to wait for a couple of updates before I do my next episode. So don't be discouraged if I don't put out more KSP 2. Just let me know in the comments below if you want more KSP 2. I'll work it in. I promise. But for now, I also noticed right here, you can use the escape menu, the escape key menu, to recover your vessel. And it disappears without yanking you back to the Space Center. It's kind of funny. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.